Bullies pick on the wrong new black girl, not knowing she's a brutal fighter. The morning fog rolled across the parking lot of Riverside Academy as Maya Thompson stepped off the city bus, her worn sneakers touching the cracked asphalt for the first time. She pulled her jacket tighter against the September chill, watching other students stream past in their designer clothes and pristine backpacks. Maya had done this routine before. 5 schools in 6 years, each move prompted by her mother's search for better work or cheaper rent. This time, they'd landed in the suburbs of Portland, where the houses had manicured lawns and the high school looked like something from a movie set. Maya kept her head down as she navigated the main entrance, following the flow of bodies through the double doors. The hallway stretched before her like a gauntlet, lined with trophy cases and college pennants. She found her locker easily enough, number 847, 3rd floor, West Wing, and began working the combination she'd memorized from the registration packet. Around her, conversations bubbled and burst like champagne, none of them including her. That was fine. Maya had learned long ago that invisibility was a survival skill. The atmosphere shifted before Maya even saw who was coming. Conversations dimmed, bodies parted, and a path cleared down the center of the hallway. Into that space walked Victoria Chen, her silk blouse catching the fluorescent lights, her heels clicking a rhythm that commanded attention. Victoria didn't need to raise her voice or push through crowds. They simply moved for her, like iron filings responding to a magnet. Behind her trailed her court, Rachel Martinez with her calculating eyes and perfect red lipstick, and Emma Sullivan, whose quiet demeanor masked her role as Victoria's information gatherer. Victoria's gaze swept the hallway and landed on Maya for exactly 3 seconds. It was a look Maya recognized. Assessment, categorization, dismissal. The message was clear. You are new, you are nothing, and you will learn your place. Maya turned back to her locker, pretending to organize books she'd barely unpacked. She heard Victoria's group pass behind her, their laughter sharp as broken glass. In her first period biology class, Maya chose a seat near the back corner by the windows that overlooked the athletic fields. She could feel eyes on her, curious glances from students trying to place the new face in their established ecosystem. When the teacher, Mr. Harrison, asked her to introduce herself, Maya stood briefly. Maya Thompson, just moved here from Detroit. She sat back down before anyone could ask questions, before the whispers could start about the girl from the rough city, now trying to fit into their suburban paradise. Victoria was in that class too, seated front and center, where she could be seen and admired. She didn't turn to look at Maya directly, but Maya caught her reflection in the window, watching, evaluating, planning. Rachel leaned over to whisper something that made Victoria smile, an expression that never quite reached her eyes. The cafeteria at lunch was a minefield of social territories. Maya recognized the geography immediately. The athletes commanded the tables near the windows, the theater kids clustered by the stage entrance, the AP students held court near the vending machines. And at the absolute center, on a slightly raised platform that the architects probably never intended as a throne, sat Victoria's table. Maya took her turkey sandwich and chocolate milk to the furthest corner, a table that might as well have been in another time zone. She managed 3 bites before the shadow fell across her tray. Victoria stood there, flanked by her followers, holding a green smoothie that probably cost more than Maya's entire lunch. "You're in my seat," Victoria said, though Maya knew for certain this table had been empty when she arrived. Maya looked up, meeting Victoria's gaze steadily. "There are plenty of other seats." The cafeteria noise dropped to a whisper. Phones appeared in hands, subtle but ready. Victoria's smile tightened. "You don't understand how things work here yet." "That's okay. You'll learn." She tilted her smoothie just enough for a few drops to splatter on Maya's tray, then laughed as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Oops, how clumsy of me." Maya didn't flinch, didn't scramble for napkins, didn't give Victoria the reaction she was hunting for. Instead, she picked up her tray, walked to the garbage can, disposed of the contaminated food, and walked out of the cafeteria without a backward glance. Behind her, she left a confused silence. The script hadn't been followed. The new girl was supposed to crumble, supposed to flee in tears or anger. She wasn't supposed to leave them all standing there, wondering what had just happened. After school, Maya walked the 6 blocks to the apartment complex where she and her mother had rented a 2-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor. The complex was clean but tired, full of families like theirs, working hard, getting by, hoping for better. Her mother, Janet, wouldn't be home until after 9. She'd picked up extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nursing assistant. Maya dropped her backpack by the door and changed into workout clothes, old sweatpants and a tank top that had seen better days. The living room was barely large enough for a couch and TV, but Maya had learned to make do with small spaces. She pushed the coffee table against the wall and began her routine. The movements came naturally now, after years of practice. Her uncle Marcus had started teaching her when she was 9, after a group of kids at her elementary school in Chicago had cornered her on the playground. Marcus had been a boxer once, with dreams of championship belts and glory, until a car accident shattered his knee and ended his career. But he still knew how to fight, and more importantly, he knew how to teach control. Fighting isn't about hurting people, he'd told her, his massive hands gentle as they adjusted her stance. It's about protecting yourself. It's about knowing you can walk away because you choose to, not because you have to. Maya moved through the forms, strikes, blocks, grapples, releases, each motion precise, controlled, purposeful. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked, her breathing steady and rhythmic. This was her meditation, her way of processing the day. With each punch she threw at the air, she thought of Victoria's condescending smile. With each defensive maneuver, she remembered the feeling of being watched, evaluated, marked as prey. The next morning brought new challenges. Someone had taped a piece of paper to Maya's locker with a crude drawing and the words, "Go back to the ghetto," scrawled in black marker. Maya removed it carefully, folded it and placed it in her backpack. Evidence, her uncle would have called it. Always document everything. In English class, Mrs. Peterson assigned group projects. Maya found herself paired with 3 students who spent the entire period talking around her as if she were furniture. When she offered suggestions for their presentation on The Great Gatsby, they looked at her with blank stares before continuing their conversation about weekend plans. At lunch, Maya tried a different table, one near the emergency exit. Victoria found her anyway, this time accidentally, knocking Maya's water bottle onto the floor. The plastic bottle rolled under several tables, forcing Maya to crawl after it, while laughter rippled through the cafeteria. Still, Maya didn't react with anger. She retrieved her bottle, wiped it clean, and continued eating as if nothing had happened. But Victoria wasn't satisfied with non-reactions. She wanted tears, wanted fear, wanted submission. After school, as Maya walked toward the bus stop, she found her path blocked by Victoria's older brother, Daniel Chen. He was everything college recruiters loved. 6'2", quarterback of the football team, headed to Stanford on a full scholarship. Beside him stood his teammate, Alex Rodriguez, who had a reputation for never backing down from a fight. "Heard you've been disrespecting my sister," Daniel said, his voice casual, but his posture threatening. Maya stopped walking, but didn't retreat. "I haven't done anything to your sister." "That's not how she tells it." Daniel stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over her. "Maybe you need someone to teach you how things work around here." "Maybe," Maya said quietly. "Your sister needs to learn that not everyone is going to play her games." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Alex laughed, the sound harsh and anticipatory. "Oh, she's got a mouth on her." A small crowd had gathered, keeping their distance but close enough to record whatever was about to happen. Maya could see Victoria among them, her expression triumphant. This was what she'd wanted. To see Maya broken, humiliated, put in her place by forces she couldn't fight. "After school tomorrow," Daniel said, "behind the gym. Don't make me come find you." Maya nodded once, then walked around them and continued to the bus stop. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. She could hear the whispers starting already, spreading like wildfire through group texts and social media. The new girl was going to get destroyed. Daniel Chen never lost a fight. She'd be stupid to show up. That evening, Maya called her Uncle Marcus. His voice was warm but concerned when he heard the tension in hers. "What's going on, baby girl?" She told him everything. Victoria's harassment, the escalation, tomorrow's confrontation. Marcus was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "You remember what I taught you? Don't start fights. But if one comes to me, finish it with control." That's right. And remember, it's not about winning or losing. It's about standing up for yourself. It's about showing them you won't be victimized. "What if I hurt someone?" Maya asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her since an incident in Detroit 2 years ago, when she'd defended herself against 3 girls, and one had ended up with a broken wrist. "You control yourself," Marcus said firmly. "You do what you need to do to protect yourself, nothing more. You're not the same scared little girl from back then. You've grown, you've learned. Trust yourself." That night, Maya barely slept. She ran through scenarios in her mind, remembered her training, tried to prepare for whatever would come. When morning arrived, she dressed carefully. Jeans that wouldn't restrict movement, sneakers with good grip, her hair pulled back in a tight braid that couldn't be grabbed easily. The school day passed in a blur. Everywhere Maya went, she felt eyes on her. Some were pitying, others excited, most simply curious. Teachers seemed oblivious to the tension crackling through the student body. In the hallways, people moved out of Maya's way, as if she were already a ghost. Victoria passed her once, between second and third period, and smiled. It was the smile of someone who believed they'd already won. "I hope you're ready," she said sweetly. "My brother doesn't like to be kept waiting." Maya didn't respond, just continued to her next class. But she noticed something. A few students looked at her differently now. Not with pity, but with something like respect. She was showing up, she wasn't running. In a school where Victoria's power had gone unchallenged for so long, that alone was remarkable. When the final bell rang, Maya didn't hurry to the confrontation. She went to her locker, carefully packed her homework, took a long drink from the water fountain. Let them wait. Let them wonder if she would show up at all. When she finally walked toward the gym, she could see the crowd had already gathered, at least 40 students, maybe more, forming a loose circle on the grass behind the building. Daniel stood in the center, still in his football practice gear, looking relaxed and confident. Alex flanked him, arms crossed, grinning. Victoria held court near the edge of the circle, surrounded by her followers, her phone already recording. Maya stepped into the circle, and the chatter died instantly. She set down her backpack, rolled her shoulders, and looked directly at Daniel. "We don't have to do this." "Yeah, we do," Daniel replied. "You disrespected my family. That doesn't fly here. Your sister has been harassing me since my first day. I've done nothing but defend myself." "Defend yourself," Victoria called out, her voice carrying across the circle. "You think you're better than us. You need to learn your place." Maya turned to look at her. "My place isn't beneath anyone." The crowd stirred at that, some surprised by her boldness, others anticipating the beating they assumed was coming. Daniel stepped forward, his size and athletic build intimidating. He didn't rush, didn't charge like an amateur. He knew his advantages and planned to use them. But Maya had been trained by someone who'd fought bigger opponents his entire career. When Daniel reached for her, intending to grab and overpower, Maya pivoted smoothly, redirecting his momentum. Her uncle's voice echoed in her mind. "Use their strength against them." be water, not stone. Daniel stumbled, caught off guard. The crowd gasped. He recovered quickly, embarrassment fueling anger, and came at her again. This time Maya didn't just evade. She caught his arm, turned her hip, and used a throw her uncle had drilled into her muscle memory. Daniel hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. The silence was deafening. Daniel Chen, the untouchable quarterback, was on his back in the dirt, gasping. Alex immediately rushed forward, shouting something incoherent, his fist already swinging. Maya ducked under it, caught his extended arm, and twisted it behind his back in one fluid motion. Alex cried out, dropping to his knees, his face contorted in pain. "Stop!" Maya said quietly, but her voice carried. "Just stop!" She released Alex, who scrambled away, cradling his arm. Daniel was pushing himself up, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. The crowd was buzzing now, phones capturing every second, disbelief rippling through the gathered students. Victoria's perfect composure finally cracked. With a shriek of fury, she charged at Maya herself, her manicured nails aimed like claws. Maya caught her wrists easily, controlling Victoria's momentum, keeping her from either attacking or falling. For a moment, they were face to face, Victoria's eyes wide with shock at her own helplessness. "You were never strong," Maya said, her voice low enough that only Victoria could hear. "You were just unopposed." She released Victoria, who stumbled backward into Rachel's arms. The entire field seemed to hold its breath. Maya stood in the center of the circle, breathing steadily, unmarked and undefeated. Around her, the power structure of Riverside Academy was visibly crumbling. "This is over," Maya announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I didn't come here looking for trouble. I just wanted to go to school in peace. But I won't be bullied, and I won't be intimidated. Not by anyone." She picked up her backpack and walked through the crowd, which parted like the Red Sea. Behind her, she left silence, shock, and the shattered remnants of Victoria Chen's reign. The video clips were everywhere by that evening. "New Girl Destroys Football Star" became the title of choice, shared and reshared across every social media platform the students used. Maya didn't have accounts on any of them, but she could feel the shift the moment she walked into school the next day. The hallways, which had felt hostile just days before, now seemed to breathe differently. Students she'd never spoken to nodded at her in acknowledgement. A freshman girl, small and nervous-looking, actually smiled at her and whispered, "Thank you." Victoria was at school, but she was a shadow of her former self. She walked quickly, head down, her usual entourage conspicuously absent. Rachel and Emma had distanced themselves, sitting at a different lunch table, their loyalty evaporating the moment Victoria's power proved illusory. Daniel avoided eye contact with everyone, his embarrassment a heavy cloak around his shoulders. Alex hadn't come to school at all. Maya found herself surrounded at lunch, not by threats, but by curious students wanting to know where she'd learned to fight like that. She answered simply, "My uncle taught me to defend myself." "That was more than just self-defense," said a boy named Trevor, his admiration obvious. "You took down the Chen siblings like they were nothing." "They're not nothing," Maya corrected. "They're just not invincible. No one is." Over the next few days, the shift became more pronounced. Stories started emerging. Students Victoria had tormented for years began speaking up. A boy named Sam talked about how she'd spread rumors about him that led to months of harassment. A girl named Ashley revealed how Victoria had systematically destroyed her friendship group because one of them had dated a boy Victoria liked. The administration finally took notice. Principal Roberts called Maya to his office, not to punish her, but to understand what had happened. Maya showed him the folded paper with the racist message, explained the weeks of harassment, the escalation to physical confrontation. "Why didn't you report this earlier?" Roberts asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Would it have made a difference?" Maya responded. Victoria's family donates to the school. Her brother is your star quarterback. Who would have believed me? Roberts had no answer for that. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. The school had allowed Victoria's behavior because it was easier than confronting it, because the Chen family had influence, because maintaining the status quo seemed simpler than addressing the rot beneath. But now, the status quo was broken and changes had to be made. An anti-bullying assembly was announced. New policies were implemented. The administration, embarrassed by their previous blindness, overcorrected with zealous enforcement of rules that had existed on paper but never in practice. Maya watched it all with mixed feelings. She hadn't wanted to be a catalyst for change. She just wanted to be left alone. But sometimes, her uncle had told her, standing up for yourself meant standing up for others too, whether you intended it or not. Victoria's fall from grace was complete by the end of the second week. She ate lunch alone, walked the hallways like a ghost, and spoke to no one. Maya observed this with no satisfaction. She knew what it felt like to be isolated, to have an entire school turn against you. It had happened to her in Detroit, though for different reasons. One afternoon, Maya found Victoria crying in the bathroom. She was standing at the sink, trying to fix her smeared mascara, when Maya walked in. Victoria froze, fear flashing across her face, fear of the person she'd tried so hard to break. "I'm not going to hurt you," Maya said quietly. Victoria's laugh was bitter. "You already did. You destroyed everything." "No," Maya corrected. "You destroyed everything. You built your entire identity on making other people feel small. When someone finally stood up to you, there was nothing left." "Easy for you to say," Victoria spat. "You're the hero now. Everyone loves you." "I don't want to be anyone's hero. I just wanted to be left alone." They stood there in silence for a moment. Two girls on opposite sides of a conflict that had reshaped their entire school. Finally, Maya spoke again. "It doesn't have to stay this way. You could apologize, really apologize, to the people you hurt. You could try to be different." "Why would you care what I do?" Maya thought about it. "Because I know what it's like to have everyone hate you. And because people can change if they really want to." She left Victoria there, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Maya didn't know if her words would make any difference, but she'd offered them anyway. Her uncle had taught her to fight, but her mother had taught her compassion. Both lessons mattered. The weeks passed, and autumn deepened into winter. Maya settled into a routine at Riverside Academy that felt almost normal. She made a few friends, quiet, genuine people who liked her for who she was, not what she'd done. She joined the track team, where her conditioning from years of training made her a natural at middle-distance running. Victoria began a slow, painful process of redemption. She started by apologizing to Sam, then to Ashley, then to others she'd wronged. Some accepted her apologies, many didn't. She ate lunch alone for a month before a girl named Patricia, herself a former outcast, invited her to sit at her table. It was a start. Daniel transferred to a private school across town, unable to bear the humiliation of his defeat. Alex returned after a week's absence, but kept to himself, his bravado extinguished. Rachel and Emma formed their own clique, but it lacked the vicious edge of their previous association. One day in December, Maya was studying in the library when Victoria approached her table. Maya tensed, old instincts flaring, but Victoria's body language was different now, uncertain, almost humble. "Can I sit?" Victoria asked. Maya nodded. They sat in silence for a moment before Victoria spoke. "I wanted to thank you." Maya raised an eyebrow. "For humiliating you in front of the entire school, for stopping me," Victoria clarified. I was becoming someone terrible. Maybe I already was someone terrible. but you made me see it. I didn't make you see anything. I just refused to be your victim." "Same difference." Victoria fidgeted with her pen. "I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I needed to hurt people to feel powerful." Maya studied her, looking for signs of deception, but Victoria seemed genuine. And it turns out I was just as scared as everyone else. Scared of being nobody, of being worthless. So I made other people feel that way instead. It was more honesty than Maya had expected. She thought about her uncle's words about control, about choosing your battles, about strength coming from within rather than from dominating others. "We all have our demons," Maya said finally. "The question is whether we face them or let them control us." Victoria nodded, gathering her things to leave. Before she went, she turned back. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness from you or anyone else, but I wanted you to know that you changed things, not just for the school, but for me." After she left, Maya sat thinking. She hadn't come to Riverside Academy intending to change anything. She just wanted to survive another year, get her diploma and move on. But sometimes life didn't give you the option of staying invisible. Sometimes you had to stand up and be seen, whether you wanted to or not. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Working late again. There's leftover pasta in the fridge. Love you." Maya smiled. Her mother worked so hard to give them a better life, taking every extra shift, saving every penny for Maya's college fund. She thought about the families in Victoria's neighborhood, with their perfect lawns and 3-car garages, and realized that wealth came in different forms. She might not have money, but she had her mother's love, her uncle's wisdom, and her own strength. The winter formal was approaching, and the school was buzzing with excitement. Maya had no intention of going. School dances weren't her thing, but her new friends convinced her it might be fun. She borrowed a dress from her cousin, did her own hair and makeup, and arrived at the gymnasium feeling oddly nervous. The space had been transformed with twinkling lights and silver decorations. Students she'd only seen in classrooms looked different in formal wear, laughing and dancing like the teenagers they were supposed to be. Maya stood at the edge of it all, watching. "You came," a voice said beside her. She turned to find Trevor, the boy from her lunch table, looking uncomfortable in a suit that was slightly too big for him. "My friends made me," she admitted. "Mine too." He paused. "Want to dance? I should warn you, I'm terrible at it." Maya laughed, surprising herself. "So am I." They joined the crowd on the dance floor, moving awkwardly to the music, laughing at their own lack of coordination. For a moment, Maya felt like a normal teenager at a normal school dance. The weight of being the girl who'd taken down the Chen siblings lifted, and she was just Maya, 17 years old, trying to figure out the rhythm. Across the room, she spotted Victoria standing alone by the punch bowl. Their eyes met, and Victoria raised her cup slightly, not quite a toast, but an acknowledgement. Maya nodded back. They weren't friends, might never be friends, but they'd reached an understanding. As winter turned to spring, Riverside Academy continued to evolve. The rigid social hierarchy that had defined it for years had dissolved, replaced by something more fluid, more forgiving. Bullying hadn't disappeared entirely. Maya was realistic enough to know that teenagers would always find ways to be cruel. But it no longer had institutional support. It no longer went unchallenged. Maya's reputation had evolved too. She was no longer just the new girl who'd fought the Chens. She was Maya who ran track, Maya who helped tutor younger students in math, Maya who brought homemade cookies to share at lunch because her mother insisted on baking when she was stressed. One afternoon in April, Maya was practicing at the track when she noticed someone in the bleachers. It was her Uncle Marcus, who'd driven up from California where he now lived. She jogged over, surprised and delighted. "Uncle Marcus, what are you doing here?" Your mom told me about everything that happened. Wanted to see for myself how you were doing. He studied her face. You look good. Happy. I am, Maya realized with some surprise. I actually am. They sat together on the bleachers, watching other students practice. Marcus was quiet for a while before speaking. You know, when I taught you to fight, I always worried I was giving you a weapon you might misuse. You taught me control, Maya reminded him. I tried to. But control isn't something you can really teach. It's something a person has to find within themselves. He put his arm around her shoulders. I'm proud of you, baby girl. Not for winning that fight, but for knowing when to stop. For showing mercy when you could have shown dominance. It wasn't about winning or losing, Maya said, repeating the lesson he taught her years ago. It was about standing up for myself. And you did. But more than that, you stood up for others too. That takes a different kind of courage. They watched the sun set over the track, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Maya thought about how much had changed since that first foggy morning when she'd stepped off the bus. She'd found her place, not by defeating others, but by refusing to be defeated herself. Senior year was approaching fast. College applications, SATs, the whole overwhelming process of figuring out what came next. Maya's grades were good, not valedictorian level, but solid enough to give her options. Her track times were impressive too, and her coach thought she might qualify for some athletic scholarships. Victoria, surprisingly, had become something of an advocate for anti-bullying initiatives. She spoke at assemblies with a raw honesty that made people uncomfortable, but also made them listen. She talked about the pressure to be perfect, the fear of being ordinary, the way hurting others had been a temporary salve for her own insecurities. One day she approached Maya with a request. I've been asked to speak at the middle school about bullying, about change. I was wondering, would you come with me? Maya was surprised. Why? Because you're part of the story. The most important part, actually. You're the one who stood up. Maya considered it. She didn't like public speaking, didn't like being the center of attention. But she thought about the younger kids who might be facing their own Victorias, who might need to know that standing up was possible. Okay, she said. But I'm not giving a speech. I'll just answer questions if they have them. The middle school assembly was more nerve-wracking than any fight. Maya sat on the stage next to Victoria, facing an auditorium full of 12 and 13-year-olds. Victoria spoke first, her words carefully chosen but genuine. She talked about the person she'd been, the pain she'd caused, the moment everything changed. When it came time for questions, a small girl in the front row raised her hand. What made you finally stand up to her? She asked Maya. Maya thought about it. I realized that my fear of confrontation was less important than my self-respect. I couldn't control what other people did to me, but I could control how I responded. But weren't you scared? Another student asked. Terrified, Maya admitted, but being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave. Sometimes being brave means doing what's right even when you're scared. An older boy near the back called out, "Did you know you were going to win the fight?" It wasn't about winning, Maya said. If I'd been thinking about winning or losing, I probably would have lost. I was just thinking about protecting myself, about not being a victim. After the assembly, several students approached her privately. One boy, small for his age with thick glasses, whispered, "There's a group of kids who wait for me after school sometimes. They take my lunch money." Maya's heart ached for him. "Have you told anyone?" "They said it would get worse if I did." "It usually gets worse before it gets better," Maya said gently. "But staying silent means it never gets better at all. Tell someone you trust. And remember, bullies count on your silence. When you speak up, you take away their power." Walking back to the high school, Victoria was quiet. Finally, she said, "I used to be the reason kids were afraid to come to school." Used to be, Maya emphasized. People can change. Do you really believe that? Maya thought about her own journey, about the angry girl she'd been in Detroit who'd lashed out at anyone who challenged her, about the controlled person she'd become. Yeah, I do. Spring moved towards summer, and graduation loomed. Maya had been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, both academic and athletic. It wasn't Ivy League, but it was a chance for education, for a future her mother had sacrificed so much to make possible. The senior class trip was to a beach resort. 3 days of supervised fun before they all scattered to their futures. Maya roomied with her track friends, spent days playing volleyball badly and evenings around bonfires, talking about dreams and fears. On the last night, she found herself walking along the beach alone, needing space to think. The moon was full, casting silver patterns on the waves. She thought about the girl who'd stepped off the bus 9 months ago, scared and defensive, just trying to survive. That girl felt like a stranger now. Mind if I join you? Victoria appeared beside her, barefoot in the sand. Maya shrugged. It's a public beach. They walked in silence for a while, the sound of waves filling the space between them. Finally, Victoria spoke. I never really apologized to you, not properly. You've apologized to everyone else. That's different. They were collateral damage. You were the one who changed everything, and I targeted you because... She paused, seeming to search for words. Because you walked in that first day like you knew who you were. You didn't need anyone's approval. You didn't need to be part of anything. You were just yourself. And that terrified me. Maya considered this. I wasn't as confident as I looked. I was just trying to be invisible. But when pushed, you didn't break. You didn't become cruel. You just stood firm. Victoria kicked at the sand. I've been cruel my whole life, thinking it made me strong. You showed me what strength really looks like. We all have our journeys, Maya said. Yours is just taking a different path now. They stood at the water's edge, waves lapping at their feet. 2 girls who'd been enemies, who'd changed each other in ways neither had expected. Not friends exactly, but no longer adversaries. Graduation day arrived with unexpected emotion. Maya sat in her cap and gown, surrounded by classmates she'd come to know and respect. Her mother was in the audience, having taken a rare day off work, tears already streaming down her face. Uncle Marcus had driven up again, his proud smile visible even from the stage. When they called her name, Maya walked across the stage thinking about journeys, about the paths we choose and the ones chosen for us. She'd come to Riverside Academy, expecting nothing but survival. She was leaving with friends, with respect, with a sense of self that no one could take away. After the ceremony, in the chaos of families and photos, Victoria found her one last time. Thank you, she said simply, then disappeared into the crowd before Maya could respond. Trevor appeared at her elbow, diploma in hand, grinning. So, we survived high school. We did, Maya agreed. Any profound thoughts for the yearbook? Maya laughed. Just that sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones you fight with your fists. Her mother reached them then, pulling Maya into a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud. Uncle Marcus joined them, his hand heavy and warm on Maya's shoulder. You did good, kid. Real good. As Maya stood there, surrounded by family and friends, she thought about the lessons of the year, about strength and control, about standing up and showing mercy, about the power of refusing to be diminished. She thought about Victoria, who'd learned that true power couldn't be built on fear. She thought about all the students who'd found their voices when the hierarchy crumbled. The summer passed quickly. Maya worked at a local gym, teaching self-defense classes to young girls. She emphasized control, awareness, and confidence more than combat techniques. Some of the girls came from situations like her own: single-parent homes, tight budgets, histories of being targeted. She saw herself in their eyes, that mixture of fear and determination. One evening, a mother approached her after class. "My daughter came home from school yesterday and told me she stood up to a girl who's been taking her lunch money for months. She said you taught her that she had the right to defend herself." "Everyone has that right," Maya said. "Sometimes we just need to be reminded of it." The mother's eyes filled with tears. "She's been different since starting your classes." More confident. She walks taller. That night, Maya called her uncle. "I think I understand now," she told him. "Why you kept teaching me even after your career ended. It wasn't about fighting. It was about passing on something important." "Knowledge is meant to be shared," Marcus agreed, "especially knowledge that can protect people, that can help them find their strength." As August wound down and college approached, Maya packed her life into boxes. Her mother had insisted on buying her new sheets and towels for the dorm, small luxuries they usually couldn't afford. "You're going to college," Janet said firmly. "You deserve to feel like you belong there." The night before she left, Maya drove past Riverside Academy one last time. The parking lot was empty, the building quiet, waiting for the next year's students to fill its halls with drama and dreams. She thought about the girl who'd walked through those doors for the first time, weighted down by past trauma and current fear. That girl had been transformed, not by the confrontation behind the gym, but by everything that came after, by choosing compassion over cruelty, by offering second chances, by recognizing that real strength came from within. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found a simple message: "Starting community college in the fall. Majoring in social work. Want to help kids who are struggling. Thank you for showing me a different way to be strong." "Victoria," Maya smiled, typing back, "proud of you. We all deserve second chances." The next morning, Janet drove Maya to State University, the car loaded with everything she owned. They rode in comfortable silence for most of the journey, the radio playing softly. As they pulled into the campus, Janet finally spoke. "You know, when we moved to Portland, I was terrified. I thought I was dragging you to another place where you'd have to start over, where you might face the same problems. Mom, let me finish. I watched you handle everything that happened with such grace. You didn't become bitter. You didn't become cruel. You stayed true to yourself while standing up for what was right." She pulled into a parking space and turned to face her daughter. "You're the strongest person I know, Maya Thompson. And I don't mean physically." They unloaded the car together, carrying boxes up to Maya's third-floor dorm room. Her roommate hadn't arrived yet, so they had space to organize. Janet helped her make the bed with the new sheets, hung up clothes in the tiny closet, arranged school supplies on the desk. When everything was in place, they stood in the doorway, both reluctant to say goodbye. "Call me every week," Janet said. "Tell me everything. I will. And if anyone gives you trouble, I'll handle it," Maya said gently. "With control." They hugged, both crying a little. Then Janet left for her long drive home. Maya stood at her window, watching her mother's car disappear, feeling the bitter sweetness of endings and beginnings. Her phone rang, Uncle Marcus calling to wish her luck. "Remember," he said, "college is a different kind of challenge. It's not about physical strength or even mental toughness. It's about discovering who you are when no one's watching, when the only person you have to answer to is yourself." "I think I'm ready for that," Maya said. "I know you are." That evening, as other freshmen arrived and the dorm filled with nervous energy, Maya joined a group heading to the dining hall. They were all strangers, all trying to figure out who they would be in this new place. Someone asked about her major. Kinesiology, Maya answered. Maybe physical therapy or sports medicine. I want to help people recover from injuries, get their strength back. That's cool, a girl named Jessica said. I'm pre-med. Maybe we'll have some classes together. As they talked and laughed over mediocre cafeteria food, Maya felt the possibility of new friendships, new challenges, new growth. The events at Riverside Academy felt both recent and distant, a chapter closed but not forgotten. Later, alone in her dorm room while her roommate was at orientation, Maya pulled out a notebook and began writing. She wanted to document what had happened, not for anyone else but for herself, to remember the lessons when life inevitably tested her again. She wrote about Victoria, who'd learned that fear-based power was hollow, about Daniel and Alex, who'd discovered they weren't invincible, about all the students who'd found courage when someone finally stood up to tyranny. But mostly, she wrote about herself, about the journey from fear to strength, from isolation to connection, from survival to growth. The story wasn't really about winning a fight behind a gym. It was about the 100 small moments of choosing courage over comfort, compassion over cruelty, control over chaos. It was about learning that true strength wasn't measured in the enemies you could defeat, but in the person you chose to become. As her first semester progressed, Maya threw herself into her studies. Anatomy and physiology fascinated her, understanding how the body worked, how it could be broken and healed. She joined the university's track team as a walk-on, pushing herself to new personal records. She made friends who knew nothing about her high school reputation, who liked her for her dry humor and steady presence. One day in November, she received an unexpected email from Principal Roberts at Riverside Academy. He wanted to know if she'd be willing to speak at their anti-bullying week, to share her perspective with current students. Maya considered it for a long time. Part of her wanted to leave Riverside in the past, to move forward without looking back. But she thought about the scared freshmen walking those halls, the quiet kids eating lunch alone, the bullies who might be stopped before they went too far. She agreed, with one condition: Victoria should speak too. They should hear both sides of the story, the full picture of how bullying destroyed everyone involved, including the bully. The assembly was scheduled for January. Maya drove down from college, nervous about returning to the place that had challenged and changed her. The gymnasium looked exactly the same, but felt different, smaller somehow, less intimidating. Victoria was already there, looking professional in a blazer and slacks, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She was studying note cards, her nervousness visible. "You look good," Maya offered. "Thanks. Community college is different. Good different." Victoria paused. "I volunteer at a crisis hotline now, for teens, trying to give back, you know." They sat on the stage before the entire student body, two young women who'd been on opposite sides of a conflict that had reshaped their school. Roberts introduced them, giving a sanitized version of events that made Maya want to roll her eyes. Victoria spoke first, her voice steady despite her visible nerves. She talked about the pressure to be perfect, the fear of being ordinary, the intoxication of power. She talked about the wake-up call of facing someone who wouldn't be intimidated, the humiliation of losing everything she'd built on fear. "I thought strength meant making others feel weak," she said. "I thought power meant controlling everyone around me. I was wrong. Real strength is what Maya showed, standing firm in who you are, protecting yourself without destroying others." When Maya spoke, she kept it simple. Everyone deserves to feel safe at school. Everyone deserves respect. When we see bullying, we have two choices: stay silent and let it continue, or speak up and risk becoming a target ourselves. I can't tell you which choice to make, but I can tell you that staying silent means nothing changes. The questions from students were pointed, honest. One girl asked Victoria how she lived with the guilt of what she'd done. A boy asked Maya if she ever regretted fighting back. They answered as honestly as they could, two imperfect people who'd learned important lessons the hard way. After the assembly, a group of students approached them separately. Each had their own story. Current victims, former bullies, bystanders carrying guilt. Maya and Victoria listened, offered what advice they could, pointed them toward resources. Driving back to college that night, Maya felt a sense of closure. Riverside Academy would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. She was more than the girl who'd stood up to Victoria Chen. She was Maya Thompson, college student, athlete, future healer, survivor. The rest of her freshman year passed in a blur of exams, track meets, and late-night study sessions. She made the dean's list, qualified for regionals in the 800-meter, and decided to minor in psychology to better understand the mental aspects of physical recovery. Summer brought her back to Portland, where she worked at the same gym, teaching an expanded program that included meditation and stress management, along with self-defense. Some of her students were adults now, women who'd left abusive relationships, men dealing with PTSD, elderly people wanting to feel safer in an uncertain world. One evening, after a particularly intense class, an older woman approached her. "My granddaughter goes to Riverside Academy. She says you're a legend there." Maya laughed. "Legends are usually exaggerated." "Maybe. But she also says bullying has dropped dramatically since your time there. That students look out for each other more. That speaking up against cruelty has become the norm rather than the exception." That night, Maya thought about ripples in water, how one stone could create waves that spread far beyond the initial impact. She hadn't thrown the first stone. That had been Victoria, with her need to dominate and control. But Maya's response had created different ripples, ones that continued to spread. Sophomore year brought new challenges and opportunities. Maya was selected for a prestigious internship at a sports medicine clinic, working with athletes recovering from career-threatening injuries. She saw herself in some of them, the fear that everything they'd worked for could be lost, the struggle to find identity beyond their physical capabilities. She worked with a former gymnast who'd shattered her ankle, a football player facing his third concussion, a dancer whose knee might never fully heal. With each patient, she emphasized not just physical recovery, but mental resilience, the importance of defining yourself by more than your ability to perform. One day, her supervisor, Dr. Chen, no relation to Victoria, pulled her aside. "You have a gift for this work. Not just the technical knowledge, but the empathy. Have you thought about medical school?" Maya had, but the cost seemed impossible. Dr. Chen mentioned scholarship programs, research opportunities that could strengthen her application. "Don't limit yourself based on circumstances," she advised. "I came from nothing too. It's harder for us, but not impossible." That conversation planted a seed that grew over the following months. Maya threw herself into her studies with renewed purpose, added research projects to her already full schedule, and began preparing for the MCAT. Victoria reached out occasionally, updating Maya on her own journey. She'd transferred to a 4-year university, was majoring in social work with a focus on adolescent counseling. She'd started a support group for former bullies, a safe space to confront their behavior and work toward making amends. "It's hard," Victoria wrote in one email, "facing the person you were, the pain you caused. But it's necessary. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can prevent others from making the same mistakes." Junior year brought unexpected recognition. A documentary filmmaker researching bullying in American high schools had heard about the events at Riverside Academy. She wanted to interview both Maya and Victoria, to tell their story as part of a larger narrative about transformation and redemption. Maya was hesitant. She'd never wanted fame, had actively avoided social media coverage of the incident. But the filmmaker, a woman named Sarah, who'd been bullied herself in school, made a compelling argument. Your story isn't just about a fight. It's about what comes after. The choice to show mercy, the possibility of change, the ripple effects of standing up. That's what people need to hear. The interviews were emotionally draining. Maya had to revisit not just Riverside, but Detroit, the incident that had made her so determined to control herself. Victoria had to confront the full extent of her cruelty, the specific ways she'd targeted vulnerable students. But something powerful emerged from their parallel narratives, a complex picture of how bullying affected everyone involved, how strength could be misused or properly channeled, how redemption was possible but required genuine work. The documentary, titled After the Fall, premiered at a film festival and later streamed online. The response was overwhelming. Emails poured in from students, parents, teachers, all sharing their own stories, their own struggles with bullying and its aftermath. Maya found herself inadvertently becoming an advocate, speaking at conferences about conflict resolution, about the difference between aggression and assertiveness, about channeling strength productively. She partnered with Victoria for some events, their dual perspective offering a complete picture that resonated with audiences. But she never lost sight of her primary goal. Senior year was devoted to medical school applications, to finishing her undergraduate research on recovery patterns in young athletes, to maintaining the grades and test scores that would open doors. The acceptance letter from the state medical school arrived on a rainy Tuesday in March. Maya stared at it for a long moment, thinking about the journey from that scared girl on the bus to this moment of possibility. She called her mother first, then her uncle, both of them crying with joy and pride. Victoria called that evening, having somehow heard the news. "Dr. Thompson," she said, trying out the title. "It suits you." "Not a doctor yet," Maya reminded her. 4 years of med school, then residency. "You'll make it. You've faced harder challenges than anatomy exams." Graduation from State University was a smaller affair than high school had been, but no less meaningful. Maya walked across the stage, thinking about all the paths that had led to this moment. The training with Uncle Marcus, the confrontation at Riverside, the choice to respond with control rather than cruelty. That summer, before medical school began, Maya returned to Riverside Academy one more time. Roberts had retired, replaced by a younger principal who'd implemented even stronger anti-bullying measures. The trophy cases now included awards for character and service, alongside athletic achievements. She walked the hallways, remembering that first day when she just wanted to be invisible. In the cafeteria, she saw groups of students mixed together. No rigid hierarchies, no clear territorial divisions. It wasn't perfect, would never be perfect, but it was better. Behind the gym, where everything had changed, a small garden had been planted. A plaque read, "In honor of all students who have found the courage to stand up for themselves and others." Maya stood there for a long moment, thinking about courage and control, about the fights we choose and the ones chosen for us. She thought about Victoria, struggling toward redemption. About all the students who'd found their voices when someone finally challenged the status quo. Medical school was its own kind of battle, long hours, enormous amounts of information, the constant pressure to excel. But Maya had learned to handle pressure, to stay controlled under stress, to keep moving forward even when the path seemed impossible. She specialized in sports medicine, drawn to helping athletes not just recover from injuries, but understand their bodies better, develop healthier relationships with competition and achievement. Her residency was at a hospital known for treating professional athletes, where she worked with everyone from Olympic hopefuls to weekend warriors. One day, 7 years after leaving Riverside Academy, Maya received an invitation. Victoria was getting married, and she wanted Maya to attend. It felt surreal, being invited to celebrate with someone who'd once been an enemy. But Maya understood the gesture. They were part of each other's stories, whether they'd chosen it or not. The wedding was small, intimate, Victoria's partner was a fellow social worker, someone who'd helped her continue growing past her destructive patterns. In her vows, Victoria spoke about transformation, about the people who challenge us to become better versions of ourselves. At the reception, Victoria pulled Maya aside. "I counsel teenagers now, kids who bully, kids who are bullied. I tell them our story sometimes, how enemies can become, if not friends, then at least people who respect each other. What do they say when you tell them? Usually they don't believe it at first. That the bully can change, that the victim can forgive without forgetting. But then they see that it's possible and something shifts." Maya thought about shifts, about the small movements that could change everything. "We've both come a long way from that day behind the gym. The difference is you were always strong. You just had to show it. I had to learn what strength really was." As Maya drove home from the wedding, she thought about the strange turns life could take. The girl who tormented her had become someone dedicated to preventing torment. The girl who just wanted to be invisible had become someone others looked to for strength and guidance. Her practice grew over the years. Dr. Maya Thompson became known not just for treating injuries, but for understanding the psychological components of recovery. Athletes sought her out specifically, knowing she understood the fear of losing everything you'd worked for, the challenge of finding identity beyond physical achievement. She published papers on the connection between mental and physical resilience. She developed programs for young athletes on healthy competition, on finding strength without aggression. She spoke at conferences, always emphasizing control, always teaching that true power came from within. One autumn day, 15 years after that first morning at Riverside Academy, Maya received a call. Trevor, her old friend from high school, was now a teacher there. He wanted to know if she'd speak at their homecoming assembly. "I know you've done this before," he said, "but this would be different. We want to honor alumni who've made a difference. You and Victoria both." Maya stood at the podium, looking out at faces that could have been hers at 17, nervous freshmen, confident seniors, and everyone in between. Victoria stood beside her, now Dr. Victoria Chen Martinez, running a non-profit focused on bullying prevention and teen mental health. They didn't tell the story of the fight this time. Instead, they talked about what came after. The long, difficult work of becoming who they were meant to be. They talked about choices and consequences, about strength and mercy, about the power of standing up and the grace of helping others rise. A student raised her hand. "Do you ever regret what happened?" Maya and Victoria looked at each other, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. "Regret is complicated," Maya answered. "I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret refusing to be victimized, but I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish the environment had been different from the start." Victoria added, "I regret everything I did to create that environment, but without that regret, I wouldn't have changed. Sometimes our worst moments can become catalysts for our best selves if we're willing to do the work." After the assembly, they walked through the halls together, two women whose lives had been intertwined by conflict and transformed by its resolution. Students watched them with curiosity and respect, seeing not a hero and villain, but two people who'd chosen growth over stagnation. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" Victoria asked. "Both of us doctors, both trying to help kids." "No," Maya admitted. "But Uncle Marcus always said life was about the choices you make when you're tested." "We were both tested. We just responded differently. And then we both chose to be better." They parted ways in the parking lot, returning to their separate lives, but forever connected by that shared history. Maya drove home thinking about the girl who'd stepped off the bus all those years ago, scared and defensive, just trying to survive. That girl had become a woman who understood that survival wasn't enough, that true strength meant lifting others, not defeating them. That control wasn't about suppressing emotion, but channeling it productively, that every confrontation was an opportunity for transformation if you were brave enough to seize it. The story of Riverside Academy had become legend over the years, told and retold with various embellishments, but Maya knew the truth was both simpler and more complex than any legend. It was the story of two girls who'd collided like forces of nature, who'd destroyed each other's facades and been forced to rebuild as something genuine. It was a story about the different forms strength could take, the strength to stand up, the strength to show mercy, the strength to change, the strength to forgive without forgetting. It was about understanding that power over others was hollow compared to power over yourself. As Maya pulled into her driveway, her phone buzzed with a text from one of her young patients, a soccer player recovering from a torn ACL. "Watched video of your old assembly online. You really took down a football player when you were 17. Maya smiled, typing back, "I defended myself when I was 17. There's a difference. See you at tomorrow's session. We're working on mental conditioning. The strongest muscle you have is your mind." She walked into her house, setting down her keys, thinking about tomorrow's patients, next week's research presentation, the continuing work of helping people find their strength. The confrontation at Riverside felt like a lifetime ago, yet its lessons colored everything she did. In her home office, she kept a single photo from high school, not of the fight, not of the aftermath, but of graduation day. She stood between her mother and uncle, diploma in hand, looking forward to a future she couldn't quite imagine, but was determined to meet with courage. That girl in the photo had no idea she'd become a doctor, a healer, an advocate. She didn't know that her worst enemy would become an ally in the fight against bullying. She couldn't have imagined the ripples that would spread from one moment of standing firm. But she had known one thing, the thing Uncle Marcus had taught her, the thing that had saved her when everything seemed impossible. True strength wasn't about starting fights or even winning them. It was about controlling yourself, protecting what mattered, and choosing who you wanted to be when the world tried to tell you who you were. Maya looked at that photo and felt gratitude for the journey, for the tests that had refined her, for the enemies who'd become teachers, for the strength that had always been there, waiting to be revealed. The story of Riverside Academy was over, but its lessons lived on in every life, touched by two girls who'd found their power in very different ways and chosen to use it for something greater than themselves.